Got Ashton Kutcher in love with Mila Kunis on that 70s show. Then they break up for absolutely no reason after he starts hanging out with Diddy. Then he marries Demi Moore, who drained him of all the adrenochrome she can, and apparently he replenished himself by doing inappropriate things with their daughters.
I had a big life, and Ashton's adult life was just beginning. I didn't see all that because I was inside of it. I just felt like a 15-year-old girl hoping somebody liked me.
That's all true. I think that I had been responsible for so much of my life. And all of a sudden this window opened up where I was safe, I had money, he loved my children. It wasn't something he feared. He seemed to be comfortable with the enormity of the ex-husband. I mean, you know, I felt like I was not coming with baggage, I had trunks.
On the outside, Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher looked like Hollywood's perfect love story. But behind the red carpets and flashing cameras, the truth was far darker. Demi has revealed how their romance, once filled with passion, spiraled into betrayal, heartbreak, and shocking compromises she never imagined making. From a devastating miscarriage, to the night she caught Ashton's infidelity through a Google alert. Every chapter was more painful than the last. But this isn't just a story of scandal, it's about survival, resilience, and one woman reclaiming her life after being broken in the public eye. This is the untold truth of Demi Moore. Demi Moore is once again opening up her life story, this time revisiting one of the most scrutinized chapters of her past, her marriage to Ashton Kutcher. What began as a whirlwind of passion and promise slowly unraveled into something far darker. According to Demi, the dynamic shifted when outside influences crept in, most notably when Diddy entered the picture, turning what once felt exciting into a source of emotional turmoil. She admitted that much of her struggle came from trying to become someone she wasn't. Demi felt compelled to reshape herself into the image of the partner she believed Kutcher wanted: younger, carefree, more adventurous. But in doing so, she chipped away at her own sense of self. Over the course of their relationship, she crossed personal boundaries, made painful compromises, and carried scars that lingered long after. Behind closed doors, the pressure of living up to a perfect Hollywood love story collided with her private battles, pulling her into a cycle of addiction and crippling the nights she spent trying to prove she could be the cool partner to often ended with self-destructive choices that only deepened her distance from who she truly was. And the shocking part, as she tells it, is that Ashton wasn't just along for the ride, he was orchestrating much of it. But Demi's story doesn't begin there. Born on November 11, 1962, in Roswell, New Mexico, her earliest years were defined by instability, hardship, and trauma. Her biological father left before she even entered the world, and her stepfather, though present, couldn't fill that void. Both parents wrestled with their own heavy battles, leaving young Demi in an environment that was anything but steady. Demi Moore's early years were anything but steady. Her parents' battles with drinking meant the family was always on the move, leaving her without the comfort of security or a true sense of home. Some of the deepest scars of her life were etched during this time. At only 12 years old, Demi faced a nightmare no child should ever know: her mother's desperate attempt to end her own life. Demi still recalls the frantic terror of trying to save her, a moment that shattered the fragile innocence of childhood forever. But the wound that cut deepest came just a few years later. At 15, her own mother allowed an older man to pay for access to her, a betrayal so profound that it left Demi struggling with issues of trust, intimacy, and self-worth for decades to come. School offered no relief. She battled undiagnosed dyslexia that left her feeling inadequate and misunderstood. On top of that, multiple surgeries to correct crossed eyes only heightened her sense of isolation. By 16, Demi made the decision to walk away from it all, out of school and stepping into a world of independence that was as harsh as it was liberating. She pieced together her survival through odd jobs and modeling work, building a fragile independence while quietly holding on to dreams that seemed worlds away from her reality. And then came the turning point: the role in General Hospital that would change everything, giving the world its first real glimpse of the woman she was becoming. With General Hospital and the breakout success of St. Elmo's Fire, Demi Moore quickly cemented herself as one of Hollywood's brightest rising stars. By the early 1990s, she wasn't just an actress, she was one of the most bankable names in the industry. But behind the red carpets and record-breaking paychecks, Demi was still battling the shadows of her past: addiction, insecurity, and an ever-present fear of being abandoned. Everything changed with Ghost. The film's unexpected, worldwide success turned her into a global sensation, elevating her from promising young actress to Hollywood powerhouse almost overnight. Suddenly, she wasn't just in demand, she had the clout to command salaries that shattered industry norms. Roles in A Few Good Men, Indecent Proposal, and Disclosure kept her at the top. And her reputation grew as a performer who brought both toughness and vulnerability to every role she took on. But fame came with a cost. By the mid-90s, Demi was living under a microscope. Every role, every personal decision, every bold choice was dissected by the public and the press. When she shaved her head for G.I. Jane, it was more than a performance, it was a statement. The bold move split audiences, some praising her courage, others mocking her. That same fearless energy that made her a trailblazer also made her a target. The pressure to uphold her image weighed heavily. And while her career was reaching dazzling new heights, her private life was unraveling. It was during this period when her personal and professional worlds collided that her relationships began dominating headlines, and none would be more scrutinized, or more emotionally complicated, than her marriage to Ashton Kutcher. This chapter, with all its glamour, tension, and heartbreak, would define not only her public image but also the long, painful journey toward self-acceptance. Demi Moore's marriage to Ashton Kutcher was a chapter filled with both promise and pain, a love story that began like a fairy tale but ended in heartbreak. When the two first crossed paths in 2003, the world couldn't look away. Their 15-year age difference became tabloid gold, and the paparazzi captured their every move. Still, Demi embraced the relationship with everything she had, determined to build a future with Ashton. On the surface, they looked inseparable, walking red carpets together, vacationing in luxury, and blending their lives with Demi's 3 daughters from her marriage to Bruce Willis. But beneath the flawless photographs, cracks were already forming. Early in their relationship, Demi suffered a devastating miscarriage, a loss she carried silently, and one that created an emotional rift that was never fully healed. That silence only deepened when Ashton made an offhand comment about drinking in moderation, even after Demi had been sober for 2 decades. To him, it may have been casual. To her, it felt like a direct challenge to her identity, her strength, and the years of recovery she had fought so hard to protect. Desperate to hold on to the relationship, Demi gave in. She drank again, and with that single choice, the foundation she had built for years began to crumble. The compromises didn't stop there, as Ashton immersed himself in a party-fueled lifestyle, one he had dipped into while spending time with Diddy. He began pushing boundaries at home. Threesomes entered their marriage, something Demi later admitted she agreed to, not out of desire, but because she wanted to be the fun partner he seemed to want. In her memoir, she confessed that every time she crossed those personal boundaries, she lost another piece of herself. What looked like freedom and experimentation from the outside was, in reality, a slow erosion of her identity and self-worth. Demi has since spoken with brutal honesty about the choices she made in the name of love, choices that blurred her boundaries and opened the door to heartbreak. The breaking point came in the most modern, almost cruel way possible. A Google alert. That's how Demi discovered Ashton's infidelity at Danny Masterson's bachelor party in San Diego. What cut even deeper was his response. Ashton justified the affair by pointing back to the threesomes they'd shared, claiming those blurred lines somehow lessened the weight of his betrayal. For Demi, it was a devastating twist, proof that what she had once agreed to in hopes of keeping the relationship alive had instead been weaponized against her. When Ashton cheated again, though he admitted it immediately, the damage was irreparable. It wasn't just another broken promise. It was the final confirmation that their marriage no longer had a foundation to stand on. By 2011, their separation was official and painfully public. For Demi, it wasn't just the loss of a husband, it felt like the collapse of an identity she had built her life around. The aftermath plunged her into one of the darkest chapters she had ever faced, marked by addiction, health scares, and emotional breakdowns that would take years to recover from. But not everyone remembered the relationship the same way. Sean Diddy Combs offered a completely different perspective. In a 2010 Time essay, he recalled the early 2000s when he and Ashton were regulars in LA's club scene, fixtures at VIP tables, living the bachelor lifestyle. Then, almost suddenly, in 2003, that version of Ashton disappeared. The reason? Demi Moore. Diddy remembered one night when Ashton showed up at a club with Demi, possibly one of their first public appearances together. Just weeks later, Ashton called him with an unexpected declaration. He was in love. That was the end of our clubbing, Combs wrote, suggesting Ashton had traded late-night parties for something quieter, more meaningful, and centered around Demi. For Demi, that intense devotion must have felt like the answer to a lifetime of searching for love, for stability, for someone to finally choose her completely. For Demi, Ashton once seemed like the perfect counterbalance to her turbulent past, while for him, the relationship appeared to be an opportunity to shed his party boy image and step into something more grounded. But after a few uneasy encounters with Diddy, Demi quietly ensured that Ashton's friendship with him came to an end. Ironically, the wild nights out that once defined his lifestyle weren't what ultimately unraveled their marriage. It was the heartbreak behind closed doors. The story didn't fade after their split. In 2015, actor Scott Eastwood unexpectedly stirred the pot during an episode of Watch What Happens Live, while Jon Cryer was fielding a question about working with Ashton on 2.5 Men after both men had dated. Demi Eastwood casually dropped a bombshell. He revealed that his then-girlfriend had cheated on him with Kutcher, bluntly adding that the affair was the very thing that destroyed Ashton and Demi's marriage. In the years since, Moore has gained profound clarity. Rather than framing love as something that completes her, she has redefined it as something that should complement a person who is already whole. She coined the term solo partnering to describe her philosophy and approach, centered on self-love, independence, and fulfillment without relying on someone else to provide it. Her priorities have shifted dramatically. Friendships and genuine, human connections now take center stage. And even her relationship with Ashton's current wife, Mila Kunis, has evolved into one of surprising warmth and civility. When it comes to romance, Demi no longer plays by Hollywood's rules. She dates selectively, prioritizing authenticity over appearances. This new chapter of Demi's life isn't about reclaiming fame or chasing perfection. It's about resilience, reinvention, and the hard-earned power of self-acceptance. After all the heartbreak, betrayal, and compromise, Demi Moore has finally stepped into a place where her story is no longer defined by others, but by the happiness she chooses to create for herself. From a childhood scarred by instability, trauma, and betrayal, to rising as one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, Demi Moore's journey has been anything but simple. She conquered the big screen with unforgettable performances in Ghost, A Few Good Men, and Indecent Proposal, yet behind the spotlight she wrestled with addiction, relentless public scrutiny, and the devastating collapse of a marriage that once captivated the world. Ashton Kutcher's alleged infidelity, the emotional distance between them, and the compromises she felt pressured to make became defining moments, forcing Demi to confront the painful patterns of sacrifice that had followed her through relationships. But from that pain came transformation. Today, Moore speaks candidly about the importance of valuing herself, embracing the idea of solo partnering, and finding wholeness from within rather than searching for completion through someone else. Her redefined approach to love and life now places authenticity and self-respect at the center, whether in friendships, family, or romance. What makes this shift so profound is not just that it represents personal growth, but that it challenges cultural narratives that have long defined women through their relationships with others, particularly men. For much of her early career, Demi Moore's public identity was tightly bound to her beauty, her marriages, and the media frenzy that followed her every move. She was admired, scrutinized, and judged in equal measure. Whether it was the roles she chose in Hollywood or her high-profile relationships, the spotlight was relentless. In many ways, she became a mirror for society's expectations of women, expected to be flawless, accommodating, and forever tethered to the idea of partnership. But underneath the glamour and headlines, Moore wrestled with the very real struggles of self-worth and belonging, struggles that many women can recognize in their own lives. Her decision to embrace solo partnering, the idea that one can be whole and fulfilled without a romantic partner, is not about rejecting love or intimacy, but about reclaiming agency. It is about rewriting the rules that say happiness comes only when someone else validates us. For Moore, this philosophy is a declaration of independence, a reminder that fulfillment is not something handed to us by others, but cultivated within ourselves. It's a shift from needing to be chosen to confidently choosing oneself. This perspective carries a powerful ripple effect. In friendships, it means surrounding herself with people who honor her truth rather than diminish it. In family, it means showing up as a mother and grandmother without losing her own identity in the process. In romance, it means no longer sacrificing self-respect for the illusion of love. By prioritizing authenticity, Moore demonstrates that relationships should enhance, not define, our sense of worth. What makes her story resonate so deeply is the backdrop against which it unfolds. Demi Moore's career and personal life have been marked by soaring highs and devastating lows. She was one of Hollywood's highest-paid actresses, celebrated for films like Ghost and G.I. Jane. Yet she was also a tabloid fixture, her private struggles laid bare for public consumption. Divorce, addiction, strained family ties, and painful betrayals were all part of her journey. For years, it seemed as if the narrative of Demi Moore was being written by everyone but herself. And yet, in reclaiming her voice, she has redefined not only how she is seen but how she sees herself. Her memoir, Inside Out, was a turning point, an unflinching look at her past that stripped away the myths and presented her story in her own words. Writing it was not just cathartic, but also an act of defiance against a culture that too often silences women or reduces them to caricatures. By openly confronting her pain, she transformed it into a source of strength. Moore's reinvention is not about erasing the past, but about integrating it. Every heartbreak, every scandal, every moment of self-doubt has become part of the tapestry of her resilience. Instead of hiding from those chapters, she has chosen to own them, understanding that wholeness comes not from perfection but from acceptance. This is the essence of her message, that to be whole is not to be flawless, but to be fully present with one's self-strengths, scars, and all. The broader cultural implications of Moore's journey cannot be ignored. We live in a world where women, especially those in the public eye, are frequently measured against impossible standards. Aging is framed as decline, divorce as failure, vulnerability as weakness. Moore's refusal to conform to these narratives is quietly revolutionary. At 60, she stands as proof that life does not end at middle age, that reinvention is always possible, and that the deepest form of love is the one we cultivate for ourselves. Her approach also challenges the glamorization of external validation. For decades, Hollywood perpetuated the fairy tale that happiness is found in being adored by others, by the audience, by a lover, by the industry. Moore's shift towards self-acceptance dismantles that illusion. It's a reminder that true power lies in no longer waiting for applause or approval, but in choosing to live authentically, regardless of who is watching. In many ways, Demi Moore's story is universal. While most people will never experience the same level of fame or scrutiny, the longing to be chosen, the fear of inadequacy, and the struggle for self-respect are nearly universal experiences. Her willingness to speak openly about these challenges provides a roadmap for others who are navigating their own journeys of self-discovery. She shows that healing is not linear, that reinvention requires courage, and that resilience is built in the quiet moments of choosing oneself over and over again. In the end, Demi Moore's story is not just about fame, heartbreak, or scandal, it's about resilience, reinvention, and the power of self-acceptance. After decades of turbulence, she has reclaimed her narrative, proving that true strength comes not from being chosen by others, but from choosing yourself. Her life today is a testament to the idea that self-worth is not conditional, and that the deepest fulfillment arises when we stop searching for someone else to complete us and instead embrace the wholeness that has been within us all along.